was humanity's first companion in solitude. Long before we built cities or wrote stories, we sat in caves watching flames dance against stone, finding in their movement a mirror to our own inner light. Before sleep was a luxury, before comfort was commonplace, there was this, the simple magic of fire and solitude. In our modern world of endless connections, of screens that never dim and messages that never cease, we have somehow lost the art of being alone. We fear the quiet moments, yet it is in these very moments, in the space between thoughts, that we find our truest reflection. Here by the fireplace, where time moves like smoke through still air, we rediscover an ancient truth, that loneliness, like fire, is not merely an absence to be filled, but a presence to be understood. Every flame tells a story of transformation, of matter becoming light, of emptiness becoming warmth. And perhaps this is what our own solitude offers us, not an escape from loneliness, but a transformation of it. There is a moment just before a fire catches, when everything hangs in perfect suspension. The match hovers, the kindling waits, and possibility fills the air like an unspoken promise. It is the same moment we find ourselves in when solitude first touches us, that space between what was and what will be. Each fire begins with resistance. The wood at first refuses the flame. The paper curls and blackens before surrendering to light. How familiar this dance feels to those who have faced their own solitude. For we too resist at first, seeking any distraction, any noise to fill the quiet, until we learn that resistance only delays our becoming. The first spark that catches is always a surprise. No matter how many fires we have lit, no matter how many times we have sat alone with ourselves, there is always that moment of wonder when light blooms from darkness, when warmth spreads its fingers through cold air, when we realize that being alone does not mean being empty. What we often forget about fire is its patience. It does not demand immediate brilliance. It starts small, nurturing its own strength, feeding on what it's given until it can stand on its own. Our relationship with solitude requires the same patience, the same gentle tending, the same faith that what begins as discomfort can grow into sustenance. And so we sit, watching the first flames find their dance, learning from their slow awakening, understanding that, like fire, our solitude needs space to breathe, needs time to transform from spark to steady flame, needs trust that what feels like endings are often beginnings in disguise. The shadows we cast upon our walls tell stories that daylight cannot. They stretch and dance, making giants of small things, turning familiar shapes into mysteries. In these shifting forms, we see reflections of our own inner landscape, how loneliness can distort what we know of ourselves, how it can transform our truths into stranger, deeper versions. There exists a peculiar intimacy in watching one's own shadow. It follows without question, moves without hesitation, stays without promise. It asks nothing of us, yet gives us constant company. Perhaps this is why firelight has always brought comfort to solitary souls. It multiplies our presence, makes dancers of our stillness, creates silent dialogue between light and dark. In the play of shadows, we learn to read the language of absence, how emptiness itself has texture, how silence carries weight. The dark spaces between flames become as important as the light itself, teaching us that what we lack shapes us as surely as what we possess, that the void itself can become a kind of fullness. Some say that shadows are merely lights, negative space, but sit long enough by a fire and you learn otherwise. Shadows are not absence, but presence in their own right. They are the necessary partners in fire's eternal dance. Just as our loneliness is not the absence of others, but the presence of ourselves in our most unadorned form. Watch how the shadows shift and merge as the fire breathes, how they never settle into fixed forms, but remain ever in motion. There is wisdom in this constant flux, a reminder that our own solitude is not a static state, but a living thing, always changing, always teaching, always leading us deeper into the mystery of ourselves. What feeds a fire reveals its nature. Green wood hisses and fights, releasing its reluctant moisture in long sighs of steam. Seasoned oak burns slow and steady, offering its strength without complaint. And pine burns quick and bright, filling the air with memories of forests. Our solitude, too, is fed by what we bring to it. Some moments we offer it our grief, and it burns hot and fast. Other times we bring our contemplation, and it smolders slow and deep. The fire accepts it all, transforms it all, not judging what we give, only returning it as light and warmth. The transformation never stops. Each piece of wood surrenders to change at its own pace. First the bark blackens and peels, then the heart of it glows. Finally it breaks apart, becoming pure light. How many times have we also broken apart in our aloneness, only to discover that breaking can be a kind of becoming. There is a moment in every fire's life when the wood seems to sing, a high, sweet note as the last moisture escapes. As cellular structures collapse into ash, it reminds us that even in dissolution, there is music. That loss itself can be beautiful. That what we surrender to solitude returns to us as wisdom. The wood that burns tonight has held its shape for years, patient in its waiting, complete in its purpose. Now it gives itself to transformation without regret, teaching us, perhaps, how to hold our own solitude, not as a burden to be endured, but as a gift to be opened again and again. Deep within every home, there exists a place where the heart of fire once dwelled. The hearth, that ancient center around which humanity first learned to gather, to tell stories, to be alone together. Even in homes where fireplaces have gone cold, something of this primal sanctuary remains. We build our inner hearths much the same way, stone by stone, thought by thought, creating a space where we can safely contain our most volatile emotions, our deepest contemplations. It requires patience, this building, and wisdom to know which stones will hold the heat of our solitude without cracking. The heart's hearth knows no season. It burns in summer's heat and winter's cold alike. Sometimes it roars with passion or grief. Other times it simmers quietly with contentment or wonder. But always it burns. Always it transforms what we feed it into light we can live by. Around this inner flame, we learn to gather our scattered selves. The one who doubts, the one who dreams, the one who remembers, the one who hopes. In the light of our solitude, they all find their place, their shadows mixing and merging on the walls of our understanding. Here, in this self-built sanctuary, we begin to understand that loneliness is not a wall, but a window. Not an ending, but an opening. Through it, we glimpse deeper truths about ourselves, about the nature of companionship, about how being alone and being alive can be the same thing. In the deepest hours of night, when the world has laid down its noise, silence becomes a presence unto itself. It sits with us by the fire, teaching us its own kind of language, one that speaks in heartbeats and breath, in the soft pop of embers and whisper of heat. Those who fear the night's quiet have never truly listened to what it offers, have never heard how darkness sharpens every sense, how it transforms ordinary sounds into poetry. The settling of a log, the sigh of wind beyond windows, the subtle symphony of a world turning toward sleep. In these hours, our thoughts become clearer, like stars emerging in darkened skies. We begin to hear the questions we've been too busy to ask ourselves. Begin to feel the weight of truths we've been too distracted to acknowledge. The night's quiet voice speaks without judgment, asking only that we listen. Time moves differently in these dark hours. It flows like honey, like smoke. Each moment expanding to hold whatever we need to examine, whatever we need to understand. Here, in this space between yesterday and tomorrow, we find a curious kind of freedom. The freedom to simply be. The darkness holds us like a secret, teaching us that some truths can only be discovered when the world grows quiet. When we stop searching and simply allow ourselves to be found by our own thoughts, by our own hearts, by the ancient wisdom that lives in silence. Watch how the embers pulse with memory, each one a tiny sun slowly dying, slowly dreaming. They hold their heat long after the flames have subsided, glowing with stories of what was. Like fragments of stars fallen to earth, they remind us that endings contain their own kind of light. Memory burns like this too, sometimes fierce and consuming, sometimes gentle as dying coals. We sit with these remembered lights, these moments that shaped us, these connections that, even in absence, continue to warm us, continue to light our way through solitude. There is wisdom in what remains after the flames die down, in what persists when passion fades to steady warmth. The embers teach us about permanence, about how some things must be transformed to be truly understood, about how loss itself can become a kind of companionship. Time has a way of turning even our deepest wounds into embers, still warm to touch, but no longer burning, no longer consuming. We learn to carry them differently then, not as burdens, but as landmarks, not as pain, but as proof that we have loved, that we have lived. In the aftermath of every fire, there remains this gift of residual warmth, this gentle reminder that nothing truly ends. It only changes form, from wood to flame to ember to ash, from presence to memory to wisdom to peace. Each transformation teaching us something new about the nature of letting go. There is a strange comfort in knowing that at this very moment, countless others sit alone with their thoughts, with their fires, with their solitude. Each of us separate, yet somehow connected by this universal experience of being apart, of being with ourselves. The flame you watch tonight is individual, unique in its dance, yet it burns with the same essential fire that has warmed humanity since time began. Your solitude too, though distinctly your own, shares its nature with every solitary soul who has ever questioned, ever wondered, ever waited in the quiet. Like fire, loneliness speaks a language that transcends time and culture. It asks the same questions in every heart it visits. Who am I when no one is watching? What remains when everything else falls away? These are the questions that have echoed through every human soul, that have sparked every great journey of self-discovery. Our separate solitudes form an invisible web across the world, each of us tending our own inner flame. Yet somehow, in understanding this shared experience, our aloneness becomes a bridge rather than a barrier. We find belonging in the very universality of being apart. Perhaps this is the deepest truth about loneliness, that in its very nature, it connects us. For to be human is to know solitude, to sit with it, to learn from it. And in accepting this, we join the endless circle of souls who have sat by their fires, watched their shadows, and found themselves in the quiet. As night yields to dawn, as shadows slowly retreat from their dance with firelight, we begin to understand solitude's deepest gift. Not the absence it first appears to be, but the presence it reveals. Like the way darkness is required to see stars, perhaps loneliness is necessary to discover our own light. The fire that kept us company through the night now burns differently, more gentle, more sure, like a truth that no longer needs to announce itself. We too have changed in these hours of contemplation. Our solitude no longer feels like an empty room we must fill, but a space we have learned to inhabit with grace. There is a particular beauty in watching morning light meet firelight, in witnessing how they don't compete but complement, how they create something new together. It teaches us that our solitude need not end when company arrives, that what we've learned in our aloneness becomes part of how we carry ourselves into connection. Time spent alone by the fire changes us in ways we don't immediately recognize. Like wood slowly seasoning, we become better at burning bright, better at warming others, better at recognizing the difference between loneliness and solitude. One is an absence we fear, the other a presence we learn to cherish. This is what the fire has taught us in its patient way. That transformation requires both light and shadow. That strength grows in quiet moments. That there is profound difference between being lonely and being alone. And perhaps most importantly, that in learning to keep company with our solitude, we discover we were never truly alone at all. May the warmth of your inner fire light your path through both solitude and communion. And may you carry this flame of self-knowledge like a quiet sunrise in your heart